You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Eternal Tournament Series. This is Season 1, Week 5. We're in Round 4. I am Gabe, also known as Calimdir, and here to break down all the action with me is Sir Rhino.
Hey, great to be here. And we've got a blast from Metagames Past matchup here. A pair of 2-1 players. We have Elunex on Felm Control and Pupicitus on Argenport Midrange. Both of these decks have been quite popular, especially before the break from the Eternal Tournament Series. Maybe falling out of the spotlight a little bit with having the target on their back that they have, and with the recent balance changes. But it's still such a strong core. It's never a terrible deck to pick, even if people are aware of how strong it is.
Right, yeah. So these decks have been through a lot of changes throughout the metagame, and then with the recent patch, Feln took some drastic changes with the changes to Black Sky Harbinger, Withering Witch, and Devastating Setback as well. So interesting to see what new tech has come in here. Let's start with Pupicitus over here. He is playing a pretty standard Argenport deck. One of the slightly more aggressive builds with Tinker Overseer, and in lieu of Argenport Interrogator. There we go, Auric Interrogator.
Yeah, or nowadays sometimes that Interrogator spot can even be Stone Powder Alchemist, as that got buffed,
right.
or Copper Hull Bailiff has taken that pass as well. But yeah, this is classic Argenport mid-range to a T that we've seen plenty of players.
Yeah, there's a spicy one of Mokto in there, but doesn't change the deck too much. And then on Elunex's side, he's got a couple cool inclusions here. So he's gone back to Felm Bloodcaster, which is a card that I have always liked. A lot of people played around with Nocturnal Observer over Felm Bloodcaster, which I also really like.
Sure.
But definitely keeping in the early blockers, which did get removed for a little bit back in last season.
So getting away from the extracts, which normally took up that spot in place of Bloodcaster, which we see is absent. The other big swap here is Steward of the Past is in the side. Rindra is now the 4-drop of choice in the main deck. That nerf to Steward kind of hurting its just incidental utility, and instead wants that big body, almost turning into like Felm Control's always flirted with just actually being a big mid-range deck that just happens to have a one-sided board sweeper, and this version of the deck is really embracing that.
Yeah, and the other thing that is notable is bringing back Swindle, taking out some of the late game cards like Azindel's Gift, things like that in some of the older versions of Felm. But the biggest thing is now that Withering Witch Storm is not as big of a thing, and we're cutting down to 2 witches, Elunex has opted to completely remove Storm from the main board and just play 3 Devastating Setback, which is a change I really like.
Yeah, and then by having Devastating Setback, it can still be a sweeper, it can still be hand disruption. So now we see, Felm Control's on 4 of Sabotage for a while. Elunex has opted to trim that down to 3 to pair with the Devastating Setback, depending on the matchup. And yeah, as you said, 2 Swindle, 4 Strategize, 4 Wisdom Elders, a whole lot of draw 2s in this deck. 3 Veras on the top. This deck's going to have a hard time running out of gas.
Yeah, and as players start to get into this matchup, who do you think is favored here? Because I think traditionally it was Argenport because of how good Argenport was against removal, but times have changed a bit.
Yeah, people like to talk about how Black Sky Harbinger is a nerf for this matchup, but I think it's actually a buff, especially now that this deck has moved to Rindra. Now you're taxing Vanquish on Rindra, Champion of Cunning, Black Sky Harbinger, and Vera, and all of these cards are big like life swing units. I'm really interested to see how this plays out, as Pupicitus has the turn to Argenport Instigator to fight the nerf.
Yeah, obviously, 4 attack is better than 3 attack. It's just that when it's the only viable Vanquish target in your deck, then it sort of loses a lot of that value. But because Rindra has come in, because we're on 4 Champion of Cunning and stuff, the extra attack will matter in a matchup like this that will grind, and there will be damage traded back and forth.
Yep. So Vera's favor is the only thing Pupicitus can do on turn 3 to get that seat going and to guarantee the curve out into impending doom. So not as much pressure as Pupicitus would like to be applying as Devastating Setback takes a Bloodletter out of his hand.
Impending doom, though, that is a lot of pressure here. And Elunex doesn't have a particularly efficient answer. Death Strike will get the job done, but it takes up his whole turn. And he's still taking 3 here from the Argentport Instigator.
I'm also not the biggest fan of holding Death Strike there against a deck playing Protect. Like, I doubt you were going to hold it to see if they played Tavrod, because look, you Death Strike during the attack anyway. So if that was your plan, I think I would have just main phasing. But regardless, doesn't get punished by a Protect. Another Impending Doom comes down, and now Elunex needs this. Was potentially going to Wisdom, but no, once the 5/5 down just to block.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. You can take 5 to potentially lock the game up in a couple turns.
Ooh, nice.
Death Strike, not a bad draw. And
not
once
bad,
again, yeah, I like not holding it.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they draw Protect, now you only have one more turn to draw a removal spell for it because you're at 5.
Right.
So I think that's kind of undue risk for next there. But
and there's not really, like we said, any information you're waiting for anyway. So
an aggressive swing, but that's to get Swindle to draw 3 cards rather than just draw 2 off Wisdom for this turn. Dig deeper, get a better chance at finding power, and finds depleted power, but gets Champion of Cunning fully active, and now you can just slam Harbinger if you want to really stabilize, or you can just go, a pair of champions and kill your opponent next turn.
Exactly, yeah. This is a cool play because it really locks up the game next turn. Sure, you could die to something potentially, but with an Aegis on the with an Aegis on your face and a deck against a deck with no reach, no charge units, you're pretty safe at 7 life here. So this is the most solid way to the easiest path to victory here.
And this is the source of frustration when you play Argentport. When you don't draw Tavrod, you don't have any card velocity. You are at the mercy of the top of your deck. You are drawing 1 card a turn for the entire game, and that's it. And as we see there, what Pupicitus drew in his first, 12 cards, simply not enough. Not enough pressure. Did not have the ability to reload after the couple of threats that he did present were answered.
Yeah, I mean, that is what Argentport that is what Argentport is. It is a deck that relies on card quality over quantity, and it's a rock type deck for people familiar with that archetype, where you're just saying, my card is better than yours, and you're hoping that gets you to the finish line. But there, we saw Feln champion, how powerful Champion of Cunning is, and nothing Argentport can do really compares to that.
Yeah, Argentport had the threats, but didn't have a way to push them through necessarily, right? Just drew a little too much power, and the deck doesn't have flood prevention. It has no way to sink that extra power into a power sink, right? There's no Seraph to activate or empower units around. It is just, when you're playing Argentport, you hope you don't draw more than 6 power, and anytime you do, it's gonna feel a little bit weaker than other decks that are out there.
Yeah, basically. As we start to get into game 2, what cards do you think are the key sideboard cards here in this matchup?
Let's see. Out of Argentport, extra protects are coming in. That's always been the bane of Fel. The 4th Vanquish looks great. Annihilates, I don't know if that's not really hitting as much anymore. It's just hitting days, so it doesn't look great. What about for Feln changing it up?
For Feln, not too much. Permafrost looks pretty good, but outside of that, Lightning Strike, I don't think this is exactly the matchup. Sure, there's Rune Hammers, but it's not that good. Storm, not great. Rain of Frog's a bit slow, and this is not the matchup for Steward of the Past.
Yeah, Rain of Frogs against good stuff pile is not generally where you got some magic target you can hit a lot easier. Sure, hitting Tavrod once in a while is cute, but at the end of the day, he's still just a thing that's.
And so Pupicitus here has 2 Sabotage in his opener, which would be key in getting his threats to go through, but not that much to hit. in Elunex's hand.
Yeah. And we see Elunex did bring in Lightning Strike. Notably, Elunex has 0 Annihilate in the 90. So Elunex just wanted to have some cheap interaction. Even if it doesn't hit everything like Annihilate basically does, it does still hit Instigator, Overseer, Unseen Commando. It's cheap and it kills things. But here it's getting sabotaged.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely an argument to bringing in Lightning Strike over something like maybe Sabotage or some of the more expensive removal, like you said, or even something like Swindle.
Yeah, like Elunex is concerned about getting run over by early aggression, and Lightning Strike helps with that. So now Pupicitus gets down the Tinker Overseer with a Protect up. Doesn't know about either of these feeding times. The Sabotage previously didn't see that. But Elunex isn't interested in using feeding time on a 2/2 until it becomes a bigger threat with a Bloodletter or something like that, which I wouldn't be surprised if Pupicitus took out Bloodletter.
Yeah,
Putting
against
weapons on
Film.
units against control is not.
Yeah, as long as he has enough threats still for that to be viable, then I think that's totally worth it. I mean, he has the 3 Mock Tote that he could have brought in, so.
And yeah, I like the Sabotage from Pupicitus here. Has a Tavrod in hand, but is light on power, so he wants to check if there's a possibility of tapping out for Tavrod next turn, but seeing a pair of feeding times means that option is probably not what he's going to bite on.
Yeah. Cow would prefer to stay a cow and not become a pork, but you know.
So Elunex here, I wouldn't be surprised if he does nothing, but wants to go with the Black Sky Harbinger as kind of de facto removal on this Tinker Overseer. Still has the feeding time to back it up. And Pupicitus draws power, but is not undepleted power, so we won't be seeing Tavrod this turn, but he's still got some things to do with this slay.
Tavrod. He had 5, yeah. But we won't see. Oh, right, because Protect. Yes, I'm paying attention. Withering Witch was also a reasonable play last turn for Elunex, but he did just need to get through that slay eventually. There wasn't much to do about it. He may well have brought out the Sabotages, and now he gets to draw 2 off this Film Bloodcaster. 2 power, just what he always wanted.
Yeah, not great. And notably, there was a pause there, so Elunex now can confirm and probably has been able to figure it out at this point. Because this has at least 1 Protect in hand. Turns out that magic number is 2.
So that means that Elunex may well try to just play this Withering Witch, which is what happens, especially when he just draws a 3rd power there. So really the only options are Feeding Time and Witch, and he knows that Feeding Time isn't going to get through, so you want to use the worst option first.
Yeah, and this still forces the Protect as a 1/1 Witch, still trades with a 5/1 Tavrod. Although it doesn't, as Pupicitus draws Vera's favor here, so what he decides to do, does he still want to swing with Tavrod first and see what he draws? Nope. Gonna deploy the whole hand. Instigator plus favor, then swing.
Yeah, and I think he's seen the pressure, putting Elunex back a little bit here. Elunex has not had an answer. Like, he saw Elunex's hand, saw the feeding time, and then hasn't seen any other answers come out. So he's not that unlikely to think that it's just the feeding time there.
Yep, and that's all it is. Elunex drew mostly power these past couple of turns, finds a aReNGee here, so can threaten a double block on Tavrod, but also gives Pupicitus an extra draw. But Pupicitus does not find a removal. Does find a flying body with a silence, so it can shut down life gain if he still wants to attack with Tavrod and see if he can go fishing for another Tavrod potentially.
The double block isn't so bad. Losing Tavrod isn't a big deal if you get something out of it. The problem is the gaining 5 life just puts him back too many turns, I think, to make that trade.
So do you see Valkyrie Enforcer coming out pre-combat here to silence aReNGee and then swinging with Tavrod?
I mean, that's definitely possible, right? That gives you 5 damage in the air with the trigger from Instigator. That gives you lethal potentially next turn or the turn after, I think.
Yeah, and you could also get a Tavrod hit in all of that.
Yeah.
So if crucially here you have 8 power, so if Tavrod finds Tavrod, you can do that. Or if Tavrod finds Runehammer, you can kill the Bloodcaster if you want to, although I wouldn't be shocked if you just save that.
Yeah, if I'm Pupicitus, I want to be as proactive as possible here, just because Elunex is down to 1 card in hand. You want to give him the least draw steps possible
Yeah, he's
and just
about to
end this
draw
game.
2 cards here as well, right? Nightfall is active. Lunix will draw 2 cards and lose 1 life on his next turn. Looks like Pupicitus is going for silence and attack line. Ooh,
And
even getting in with
swings
the
in with
3/3.
the
Sure.
Instigator. Okay.
Yeah, because if they want to kill Tavra, they have to double block
Yeah,
it, which means you
right,
just
right.
get in 3 damage with Instigator. So I like this.
Yeah.
And
And he
Tavrod
got
hits
some Gem
a
Blade.
Gem Blade.
Okay.
Okay.
That'll do.
You've got 2 flyers. It's likely one of them lives this next turn, but it's possible they both die. Again, Elunex is getting 2 draws here.
Yeah, and this is a ton of damage here. Even without the Gem Blade, this is lethal.
Strategize and Waystone. Not what Elunex is looking for. Needs to find something like a Harbinger plus something.
Well,
Okay, he can
Cunning's
play
not
both of
bad.
these units, yeah.
And he puts the Justice.
But he's dead on board, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's dead. But I
Because
do
of the
really like
Instigator.
that Elunex now stole one of Pupicitus's cards and just put it in his deck.
Yeah. Yeah, Gemblade on the 2/1 flyer is lethal here thanks to Instigator. So really good job by Pupicitus, seeing that he could swing with Instigator last turn, and that gives him lethal on this turn before Elunex
Nope,
could
there's the
turn this
face.
game.
He just whoops.
Oh, snap. Yeah, Cobalt Waystone. Oh. So Elunex
And
does
now
get to draw.
okay.
This isn't over yet.
Now okay, then another Justice Sigil.
Now it's over.
From Pupicitus's deck. Oh,
Ooh.
and that's going to see players going to 1-1 here as they move into Game 3. And
Ooh.
not having Annihilate hurting in this specific matchup.
Yeah. Ooh. All right. That was a fun one.
Yeah. Like I said, I think in round 1, I'm definitely in favor of less Annihilates, or maybe I said that off camera. But anyways, I think Annihilate is not in the best place it's been with all of the 3 faction and charge units running around. But
yeah,
in this matchup, in the Unseen Commando matchups, it is a valuable card.
Yeah, when Annihilate's good, it's the best, right? It's
right.
Annihilate. It has that reputation
for the same reason that Bring Down is good. 2 mana, super efficient, or 2 power, fast speed, efficient removal is just almost as good as it gets.
Yeah, when you pull the trigger and go heavy on Annihilate, if it pays off, it really pays off decks in the format. But it is a risk right now in this current metagame, and Elunex making a real bold decision to go with Z.
Yeah. This is looking a little bit different here. Without all these sabotages to clear the way for Pupicitus, Elunex is going to be able to remove threats and then play out this Champion of Cunning eventually to gum up the board.
Ooh, Pupicitus did keep in Bloodletter. There we see it as the draw for turn, deciding
and that's
that
going to be damage right here.
Yeah, he decided that even though it's a little sketchy to play out against Feln, when that Feln deck, as we said, isn't playing Annihilate, now you're making
Lightning Strike.
Yeah, it dodges Lightning Strike. So it might have been a thing where Pupicitus kept it in both times and just knew about it, or saw the last game and was like, you know what? I want this Bloodletter. I want this extra pressure.
I want to see the Swindle go to the bottom. There we go.
It's gone.
Yep.
This matchup is also doing a good job of showing off why Bloodcaster kind of fell by the wayside.
Right.
There's just flyers all over the place out of this Argenport deck.
Yeah, as Stone Scar declined a little bit, as aggro, found new paths, new avenues to attack the face, found Bloodcaster lost a lot of value.
Avrod's here, but Elunex can play a Champion of Cunning, but it's only going to be a 5/5. Now, crucially, has an Aegis, so can block the Valkyrie Enforcer, but Tavrod's going to get in a swing or two this game, and that could be disastrous.
No cards for Pupicitus, so dodges a bullet there on Elunex's side. Pupicitus is playing very few hits for Tavrod, to be fair, so it's not that unlikely for this to happen.
But naturally drew a Tavrod anyway, so not a bad consolation prize.
Yeah, so if Pupicitus just swings with his whole board, Elunex goes to 4 and is left with no board.
Yeah, it's And with 2 Tavrod swinging in, your odds of hitting something are a bit higher, even though you've already drawn two hits. And I don't know what the number of Runehammers in Pupicitus' deck is at this point,
Yeah,
because they don't
post-board,
naturally kill anything in Elunex's deck, so they are a bit risky to keep in.
Yeah, they're not cards that you want to draw ever. Only would want to hit them off Tavrod.
But we also do know that he kept in some number of bloodletters. So if he hits a bloodletter, that sets up a lethal Valkyrie Enforcer.
True. And Bloodletter, Bloodletter would be huge here.
I think you have to attack with these Tavrods. He opts to not attack with Valkyrie Enforcer. I can respect that because Elunex could have opted to eat the Enforcer, eat one of the Tavrods, let one Tavrod live, go to 2.
Yeah.
And double whiff. Is that what we saw there?
Looks like it. And Elunex didn't even opt to block both Tavrods.
Keeping one Champion of Cunning around, did not want that Valkyrie Enforcer to threaten lethal. Instead, now he'll be able to play out Rindra, which will get buffed.
Yeah,
the
buffed
problem is it dies to slay, but
well,
I think
Elunex
that can't play around that.
Yeah, not only that, but Rindra Nightfalls. Elunex is at 2. I have some concern.
Avera's favor.
Yeah, Avera's favor and another Nightfall from Elunex himself. But either way, he was dead there.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. Like, if you give up your only flyer, then they have an unblockable threat effectively, and you don't know what you're drawing. So, there is a choice there to just trade with both Tavrods or press your luck and see what your draw is. And he decided he had better routes to winning that match by holding on to that Champion of Cunning.
So we see Pupicitus take that match 2-1 over Elunex. Argenport taking it over Feln Control, and that's kind of how we thought it might play out. I think, especially without the Annihilates, it really hurts Elunex in that matchup.
Yeah, he also never saw like a Permafrost just as a cheap removal spell either to help out. So a lot of those games came down to Pupicitus getting just enough chip damage early and Elunex not being able to pull off the stabilization in the mid.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we have any backups, but so it looks like we're gonna go to a backup match in just a minute. Let's take 1 second, and have you taken a look at all the decks that have come today? It's interesting spread of the metagame.
I have not looked at every single deck, but I have looked at some of the metagame breakdown numbers out there, and Inquisitor Mako is going through at the most popular he has ever been.
Mokto was a card that was super controversial when he came out. Everyone thought he was going to be absolutely broken, and then he just completely fell by the wayside very quickly. But now a resurgence thanks to, I think, in part Unseen Commando and Whirling Duo and a lot of these lifesteal cards, and also just the retuning of Fire Justice Shadow type decks as well. Plus the changes to Nostrix and Shelterwing Rider, buffing both of those cards, have just given Mokto so many more homes.
Yeah, he's and the other big thing here is Mokto and all the revenge cards got a lot better once all these Justice decks got better at card draw, right? When you're more reliably getting his revenge back. And Wanted Poster is the big one, or in these primal decks, you have Strategize or Wisdom or whatever. And that was the thing that, we'd seen Mokto in other decks. I'd played him in Justice Primal Shadow Control before with like setting up Mokto with Staff of Stories is like the most fun.
Oh man, let me tell you about, I won't tell you about it, but that was one of my favorite decks is Mokto Staff of Stories. It wasn't very good, but it was fun. All right, so we're going to go take a look at LightsOutAce playing Feln Reanimator versus Dion. Okay, well, you can take that one.
D'Antoine?
Yeah, there you go. Sure. Versus FJS on FJS removal, which is what we've seen a couple times and what we saw last week as well. I'm not sure if this is the Highwayman version or the Throne Warden version though.
I'm checking it out right now. No Highwayman. This is like Privilege of Rank, Throne Warden, 4 Ikaria, 2 Daisho kind of version, 4 Rise to the Challenge, 4 Harsh Rule. Generally a favorable matchup for Felm. The Felm Reanimator list, it really is about it's on the FJS list to curve out into Ikaria and have some pressure with her, because if they don't, they can this Felm deck can just snowball.
Yeah, traditionally Haunting Scream, Spore Folk type stuff is very good against removal because they don't really care about it. They're getting large amounts of value on the board all at once and then taking turns off to combo or whatever and set things up.
Yeah, this is post board, so D'Antoine has access to two Steward of the Past, an extra Mokto, 4 Valkyrie Enforcer, so he's got the tools to combat this, and I believe this is game 3, and we're tied up 1-1.
Yeah, so let me get, I'm going to just pull up these lists for myself here so I can talk about what specifics D'Antoine has there. But yeah, Direwood Beastcaller looking pretty good in this matchup.
And we see Sporefolk came out from LightsOutAce. It did hit Avara, threw that into the void. Also threw a Grasping at Shadows of the Void, but still, that's already good value. A 2-drop that just gets on the board and puts Avara in your void. You're pretty happy about that. Sabotage comes out from D'Antoine there, and has his pick of taking out a Feeding Time and Unseal or a Strategize. Unseal will eventually be strong, but Lights Out being tight on power, it's not particularly great right now. And opts to just take the Feeding Time out, as it's a super clean answer to whatever threats he may have. Mokto.
Yeah, exactly. I still do not have. Okay, I just now have D'Antoine's hand cam, and I see, he has the Ikaria ready to go once he gets up to 7 power. And Steward of the Past, like you said, very good in this matchup.
So, and here we see Valkyrie Enforcer out of the sideboard. This is kind of the stuff of Felm Reanimator's nightmare, where it's a flyer, so it can block things you scream back, and it silences scream targets. So now this Beast Caller is it's useless for the rest of this game.
Yeah, so post board or pre-board, I really favor the Scream deck, but with the Steward of the Past, 2 Steward of the Past is not a lot, but when you draw it, when you draw 1, that's enough. So with the Valkyrie Enforcers and the Steward of the Past, it's really looking pretty good for D'Antoine here, because LightsOutAce basically just on 1-1, 1-2 aggro with Rindra to back it up.
And crucially, LightsOutAce has the window to get a Facey just next turn, but D'Antoine has the option to Steward right this turn and silence the Vara that's in the void. So we'll see what he opts to do, because he could rise to the challenge here instead of playing Steward, but you miss out on the ability to silence this Vara if they get a Face Aegis.
And he goes for the rise to the challenge.
So yeah, LightsOutAce might not recognize how lucky he or fortunate he is here that he'll get to deploy this Face Aegis, which will block Steward of the Past summon trigger.
Yeah, that's going to be a big deal. I don't think D'Antoine, because this version, the quote removal pile version, does not have Varus Favor, whereas the version with Highwayman does. And so getting through this Face Aegis is going to be very difficult for D'Antoine. Yeah,
there's a high probability still has some number of like torches in the deck and things like that.
Yeah, because Torch does answer Haunting Scream.
But again, it does mean like for the foreseeable future, there is a Vara in the void for LightsOutAce that is not silenced now, and that's pretty big.
Yeah, especially when you have now a Rindra in there to get back with it.
This ultimately all might not matter though, because D'Antoine's going to curve out into an Ikaria, and as I stated earlier, that's kind of the key to this matchup. If the Ikaria can get the pressure going on curve, it can be tough for Felm Reanimator to win this matchup.
I mean, this is a pretty good answer.
It is. It's not bad. This gives you a good shot at racing it.
Yeah, both of these
especially
units
with
here,
another grasp.
Yeah, both of these units here can attack through Ikaria. And if D'Antoine's not alive long enough to draw his War Cries, Ikaria doesn't matter that much.
Antoine found the torch and found another steward, but
there's a
Vara's
Karya.
out here. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little late to the party. We'll set that up later, but for now, Akaria comes out. Antoine hoping to hit something very good off that, and LightsOutAce has to figure out how he wants to attack here.
I think you have to attack with Vera and Rindra.
Mhm.
The question is, do you attack with the other two? And the answer is probably.
He's opting to strategize first, so that locks him out of using Grasp post combat. But Vara can't die during this
Right.
combat, so doesn't really matter. You weren't going to Grasp because now you swing with everything. You found another shadow unit, so whatever dies can come back when you play Rindra. And yep, that's what we see here. So now LightsOutAce gets to continue to chain units back, has multiple lifesteal units in play.
Yeah, gaining 5 life here is huge.
Your opponent doesn't play Harsh Rule anywhere in the 90s, so you can't get punished for overextending. All you want to do is play as many units out as possible.
As D'Antoine?
Yeah. D'Antoine does not play any Harsh Rule. Oh, no, there are 4
yeah,
Harsh Rule.
yeah, no. He
They
plays
were,
Harsh Rule. That's why
I was really confused, and then it turns out I was just bad at reading lists. So yeah, LightsOutAce chose to hold the Rindra rather than play it. Okay, sure. That means you get to hold up Unseal here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And he will be able to play Rindra and hold up Unseal next turn and gain another 5 life off of Rindra, either from Amethyst Waystone or just the second Rindra coming down to trigger Nightfall. Also, Annihilate, not bad here, right? Because otherwise this would
changes the clock.
Yeah.
It does mean you won't have Annihilate for these stewards that are about to come down, but you don't. But instead, the big Throne Warden's going to come down, gain some life. D'Antoine only had access to 7 power, so he couldn't play 2 units this turn. It makes sense to play the biggest one and gain some.
See, this is awkward for LightsOutAce because you kind of still have to attack with Rindra just to gain the life.
Yeah, you don't have to,
you don't have
but,
to, but
you probably will.
Yeah.
Either gets eaten by the Throne Warden, and that means your Vara survives, so that's fine, or it doesn't get eaten by Throne Warden and gets in for 5 damage. So, hey, that works out too.
Yeah, and D'Antoine has to make some blocks here because obviously he would die otherwise.
So now LightsOutAce, because he drew power this turn, can grasp back the Vara and hold up Unseen here. Pretty good.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah, this Unseal is going to do work.
This game in particular is really, really close here. Like a lot of minor decisions can change the outcome at any moment.
Yeah, I mean, this all goes all the way back to that sabotage on turn 1 from D'Antoine and the decision of when to rise versus play Steward, right? Because this Vara could have been silenced this whole game if he chose to not rise for that Throne Warden, which, by the way, is still in hand and hasn't been cast yet this game.
Yep, he's got both of them. He has both.
Yeah, so like there's some butterfly effects going on here, but all right, Vanquish is the draw. That'll get unsealed. Opts to play out Throne Warden rather than Steward here, just to gain that extra life.
Yeah, and Crest here, reasonable power draw at this point in the game. Gets to play out 2 spells here. The question is which 2? Obviously, Gorgon Fanatic is going to be one of them.
The other question becomes, are you swinging with Vara here now that you have no way to bring her back?
Right, that's true.
Like, are you swinging with just Rindra, or are you swinging with Rindra and Vara?
Yeah, because that doesn't... I think you might swing with just Rindra because Rindra and Vara does not change the clock.
Right. And here we see, I like the swing with Spore Focus as well. It either gets blocked and you have 2 units, you can fill up your Void more and reload the board even more, or you just get in for 1 extra damage here.
Right. Yeah, and I think D'Antoine has to block the Rindra here.
It'd be a little scary to go any lower than that, especially when your opponent has like the Haunting Scream angle, which can kind of burst you in spots where you don't have any flyers in play.
Yeah, and keeping the armor makes him live to things like Steel Die Show still.
Sure. Yeah, because does he still have a Warcry 5 lurking, or was that...
Oh, yeah, he does.
Yeah, he still has 1 more Warcry 5.
Oh, no, I think he...
Well, we saw
he definitely
the Throne
drew
Warden
the 9/9
Throne
Throne Warden. And then, and he attacked twice with the Karya, I believe. So he should have 1 more.
Yep, but instead it's a Harsh Rule. Yeah, that's not bad at all here. Now, again, that means No Steward of the Past coming out here. But it also means D'Antoine's not dying, which is probably preferable.
Another face Aegis for LightsOutAce.
But LightsOutAce has already seen, what, 3 Grasping at Shadows this game?
Right, so, but there's more Varus.
Yeah, that's where the numbers even out. D'Antoine could go fishing with a Rise here, but it might be safer to just play both Stewards. Get the Void silence.
Yeah, get that out of here, please.
Yeah, there we go. So the Void has now been silenced. The Vara in there is simply just a 6.
The dead will no longer speak. And Rindra gonna try and close this game out on his own. Very difficult road ahead for LightsOutAce.
Yeah, he's still gonna swing though, get that 5 life gain. And might just Death Strike the Steward of the Past that's blocking Rindra because it has Overwhelm here.
Right. So he still gets to get in for the full 5 damage here.
Yeah. Yep. So now that puts D'Antoine in Haunting Scream range, crucially.
Yeah, even with a Silence Void, he still has another Rindra. Even though it has no text on it, you can still scream it back for that 5 flying damage.
But D'Antoine found what got that Warcry 5, and it's Valkyrie.
It's a flyer, yeah.
Yeah, so that is an 8/8 flyer, would get in the way of anything that got screamed back, and we'll see it come out here. And by the way, it also silences a thing, and
yeah, it also kills the opponent. It's as reasonable. Oh, Death Strike, not bad though.
Yeah, decent here. Now, it used to be before Steward got changed that Steward would shut down Wanted poster, which I think was a bug anyways, but now it doesn't anymore. So you don't have to worry about that. So if you trade your Rindra with this Steward here, you're gonna allow D'Antoine to draw 2, but this is a tough spot for LightsOutAce. He needs to draw like a Vara.
Yeah, and I like
to get
him
back
holding the Death Strike there just in case he can get through some damage by killing the last remaining blocker. But with that Ikaria, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, Ikaria has endurance. So can't really sneak in a Death Strike lethal here. You can still force them to block with Ikaria, but that means the leftover Valkyrie Enforcer will be lethal. So yeah, LightsOutAce opts to just Death Strike the Enforcer. All's Annihilate. So now you annihilate Steward and force the exchange with Ikaria.
Yeah. And we're back to square one, except D'Antoine has a Rise to the challenge.
Yeah, and he draws
2 off of Wanted poster. Whoops. Okay.
Yeah, so D'Antoine is still very much ahead here, but is at 4, and if he doesn't find a flyer
or a 9/6 Runehammer,
yeah, that'll get him out of lethal range.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay he'll be happy to see that card.
Yeah, instead opting to deploy Quarry though instead of Rise plus Hammer, but that's fine. And Hammer comes down, puts on the clock, takes him out of Haunting Scream lethal range, and looks
that
like
does not do it for LightsOutAce.
Yep, D'Antoine is going to take this matchup 1.
Yeah, 2 Varus favors, not enough to break that Runehammer. Runehammer going to come in, bring LightsOutAce down to 0, and that'll be the end of the game. As we see, I believe D'Antoine take that match 2-1.
Yeah, that was game 3. So D'Antoine takes it too many threats off Rise, too many war cries that hit awesome things because that's what the deck does. And out of LightsOutAce only saw 1 Vara that whole game.
Yeah, I mean we did see Vera show up a couple times, but it was the same Vera. And I think that's going to be it for our coverage of this round. So round 4, right?
Yeah, that was round 4. So
wow, it's been these have been some long matchups.
Yeah, we've been having some pretty epic matches today. So yeah, round 4 comes after round 3, and after that comes, you guessed it, round 5. So we're going to take a quick break here and be back with more coverage in just